Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hi, my name is Vivian Acquah, and I'm so excited about today's episode of Rising Voices, and I have so many amazing guests. But first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Vivian Acquah, and I call myself the Inclusive Workplace Wellness Advocate, and I have the honor to share something about Amplify DEI. And on the other side, on my other side, you'll see is my son. My son is my main inspiration of the impactful summit that I hosted, of course, with the support of Indeed. Indeed was the main sponsor, and Amplify DEI is a place where I had the opportunity to, together with 92 international experts, to move the needle when it comes to amplifying diversity, equity, and inclusion. And to give you a highlight of the speakers that showed up, I want to share something else, and that is the amazing panel speakers that spoke up. So this is a highlight of one of the Indeed members that shared up. Olivia Fromm also was on that, but also know that the amazing people, here are all the amazing people that shared their insights, and it was all about moving the needle for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So on the summit, we spoke up about racial equity, we spoke up about unconscious bias, we spoke up about leadership, what can leadership do, but we also challenged gender diversity, because gender diversity is not only for women, it's all for genders, right? So that's why. And today I am really excited to be here, and also know that if you have any questions or any comments that you want to share, please know that you can share them in the comments section or in the chat section, so that people, we take the time to answer your questions. So don't be afraid, don't wait last minute. I know that the last part is for the question section, but if you have any questions or anything that you would like to share or give a shout out to all the amazing panel members, please do that, because we all need some encouragement right now. So I'm handing the mic over to Misty Gaither, and she's going to introduce herself right now.
Thank you so much, Vivian. I share in your excitement being here on the panel today. My name is Misty Gaither. I'm the Senior Director and Global Head of Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging at Indeed. That is a really long title. So all that means is that I have an opportunity to develop strategies to ensure that we have a culture of inclusion and belonging. And so just think about, from the time you start looking at the place where you want to work, what our marketing advertisements look like, how we show up on social, to the experience that you have in your interview process, and then once you belong. My team is responsible for providing guidance and being really consultative throughout the business to make sure that everyone feels like they can be their authentic selves and really thrive and have meaningful work. And I will hand it over to one of my colleagues, Aiden.
Hi, my name is Aidan McLaughlin. I'm the Director of Branded Content and Storytelling, another long title. Essentially, my job is to communicate Indeed's mission, values, and culture to the world in the most informative and engaging way. And that's part of what Rising Voices was all about, that we're going to delve into. And I can hand it over to Cons and Domi.
Hi, I'm Constanza.
And I'm Domenica.
And we are the co-founders of 271 Films. We create content that pushes boundaries and pushes the status quo. And so when Indeed Rising Voices came to us, we were like, yes, this is exactly the kind of project that it's really,
it's within the mission of our own home, it's in the mission of our production company, and we are very excited to show you a little clip about Rising Voices, so you can also get a sense of what it was.
The Rising Voices program is really an opportunity for 10 filmmakers to make a short film, and they have a budget of $100,000, and hopefully creates a space for them to build a career.
I think a great short film can really spotlight a filmmaker's vision and hopefully get other projects up in the air.
Short films are really your ticket into the business.
All it takes is one. It just takes that one person to believe in you, that one opportunity, that one job.
Every filmmaker in this program is unique and different. They come from different walks of life, and they have different visions and viewpoints, and they all have a different perspective.
Cover's about an immigrant Nigerian father must tell his son why his mother's not coming home.
Flames is about two childhood friends that find themselves alone in the woods just before one of their graduation parties.
Yo, where everybody at? Oh, they're gonna be a minute.
This is a moment in time where they can say these very last words to each other before one of them goes off to college.
It's about a young woman grieving the death of her grandmother, and in that grieving, she confronts both herself and her past.
My film is about a young musical prodigy out in the middle of nowhere preparing for the audition of a lifetime.
Shoebox is about a 11-year-old who sweeps hair at a barbershop so he can create a garden in memory of his mother who passed away.
No te preocupes. It's about a young Caribbean immigrant mother that is trying to juggle motherhood and being a dreamer.
The film is about these 3 generations of a Chinese family who have lived and worked in this ballroom for their entire lives.
不好意思啊，对不起，对不起，李月真优秀。
谢谢啊，对啊，她就是遗传我妈有艺术细胞。
It's important for filmmakers of color to tell their stories because if they don't, someone else will, and they'll get it wrong. And so it's important that we tell our stories with specificity and all the details we can muster.
You're going to see films that feature people that have never been featured in films before. You're also going to see the building blocks for that new version of Hollywood.
Given what we've seen right now regarding rising voices, right? I'm curious about your involvement, Aiden. I'm also curious about Constanza and Domenica's involvement coming up to this. What did you see?
Well, I think you can get a lot of it from even just the first half of what we saw. I can't take any credit really for Rising Voices. It was the brainchild of our CEO, Chris Hyams, who asked the question, you know, what if we took what it would cost to do a TV commercial, which in the US is around $1 million for production. And instead of doing that, making that money available to BIPOC directors, 10 BIPOC directors to create a short film around the meaning of work. How would that perspective, how would those stories show up? And that was the question, right? And all good questions, we didn't know the answer, and the job was to find out what would happen. But we knew immediately that we had to find partners who could guide us on the journey. That's where LaFawn Davis, our group vice president of ESG, came in and helped us, like, you know, how are we going to build this program? How are we going to get credible, authentic partners who could shape it in a way that's meaningful? And that then led to Lena Waithe and her production company, Hillman Grad, and Rishi Ranjani, the president, and that they just rolled up their sleeves and got into a discussion about how do we structure this in a way that's meaningful. So it's not just about, hey, we provide some funding, we're going to get some stories into the world, but how do we create a sustainable pathway to show that talent is everywhere, but universal, but opportunity is not? What is the power of opportunity? So they came on board and said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to give 10 BIPOC creators $100,000 to tell their story. And, you know, if we had decided to tell a story of work, we wouldn't have gotten into some of the amazing subject matter, intergenerational sacrifice, you know, immigration, you know, love and graduation. There's just, I mean, the topics, the films themselves just span all of the essential human truths in a way that was authentic. And I think that was sort of the starting point. Then, so we had the idea, we had the funding, we had the right partner, we had Lena driving us forward. And then we realized, okay, well, we have actually got to launch this thing. We put out a creative call. We got 850 scripts in 2 weeks. We had 2 weeks to whittle that down to 10. And then we had, and I'm going to hand it over in a minute now to 271, but they came in and we're going to ensure that these scripts were going to become films. And normally you'd give partners lots of time to get a film from a script, a short from a script to a final film. We gave the 271 the team a challenge of putting these films together in about just under 2 months to be debuted at Tribeca Film Festival. So like that's the overview of the program. I'm just going to maybe hand over just a little bit more to Constance and Domi about their view of Rising Voices from our idea stage to what they were tasked with.
I'm curious to hear Constance and Domenica in this conversation.
Of course. I mean, when Reggie called us and was like, we have this idea, there's this much money, Indeed wants to, give opportunity to 10 BIPOC filmmakers, and this is the timeline, we both were like, that's like almost impossible, but like the money really, really helps make it possible. So let's see, let's look into. And I mean, honestly, throughout the whole process, we knew it was a giant challenge. I mean, I think all of us, all of the partners were aware of the task at hand and the timeline and everything. But we said yes, because these opportunities don't come along, and they don't come along in the way that Indeed put it out, which was from a place of, real opportunity. It wasn't like checking a box. It was like, how do we get, how do we put this in the hands of the people that actually need to tell these stories and let them do it freely? And that's exactly what happened here. Yeah. And that was something that we could not walk away from, even if it was scary to say yes.
And for us, it was about like sharing our personal experience with the filmmakers and serving as a guide to help them on if it was challenging for us, having experience, most short films, especially independent films, take like a year to get made from beginning to end, and then you have to search for funds for festivals and how to get it out. And here's the money, here's the timeline. And so I think that what we kind of created was like a little mini film school, really, with like all the tools and power of like a 3-month intensive to be like, you got this, here's what you need to do, here are the deadlines, and really empowering themselves to believe in themselves. And like directors just have to make decisions, and a lot of times in the real world you don't have months, you don't have like when you. So I think for us, it's also realizing that there was a giant leap in their careers that this opportunity is creating, and we see it in every single filmmakers now, in like where they're at now, which is cool, and just kind of makes us very proud to be part of this program. We were already proud, but to see just the growth, it's like mama proud.
I can hear the emotion in both hearing Aiden talk, but also hearing you all talk about how rewarding it was. Can you share, because being in a pressure cooker in such a program where you have a unique opportunity to share the voices, but also to highlight, to amplify diversity, equity, and inclusion, what was the most rewarding part of this experience for you, and what did you learn out of this?
We learned so much from it, so much from the filmmakers. We say, we put together like a mini school, but honestly, I think it was a mini school both ways. We learned each other, we grew together, we expanded our not only professional knowledge and experience, but also our humanity. I think all these stories come to life, and seeing where they were coming from, the places that these stories were coming from, really enriched our lives in ways that I don't think are, we can't really measure them, except how we continue to move forward and just sort of expanding our viewpoints and our lives.
Because when you show, you can make change. When you show real authenticity and real lives, and you stop creating films through the wrong lens. These films are through these films are through the authentic hearts and souls and experiences that you don't often get to see. So that's the most rewarding thing. It's like, hello, here are all these stories, and we're here and we're ready. Hollywood, you know, and but I think what's also exciting is that like it's diverting from the old Hollywood. Like I see a wave, like a new wave of filmmaking, a wave of creators that are not oppressive, that are not just trying to diminish our voices. And I think that for me is the most exciting thing, that this is just the beginning of something bigger that I think will show up in like history books, you know, and like that's really exciting.
You're making my work very hard because I'm supposed to moderate. In the meantime, I'm getting goosebumps and chills, and really, I lived through your words. Your words really give me that feeling like, ooh, I'm missing out. And also, Misty, I'm curious about your experience, right? Because you, within the DEI domain, you seeing this project come to life. Can you share your takeaways, your lessons learned?
Definitely. I think the word that comes to mind is just proud. I think that I really appreciate the boldness of our CEO. And then, of course, being the leader of inclusion and belonging. I think this is what we see when inclusion and belonging is actioned, and when we actually take a bold step to inspire other people. So that makes me proud. We talk about, you know, the Black, Indigenous, people of color, BIPOC community, like being the culture. And I think what we saw on stage at the film festival and just this entire initiative speaks to that. And so I love that we were able to inspire other companies. And I think so often when we're staring at our screens, we are entertained and we forget about the work that goes into it behind the scenes.
Exactly.
And so I love that we were able to expose a different side of the entertainment industry. And for me personally, this is always exciting. I think I've shared this with Aiden, but my dad was actually in the motion picture industry, was a key grip his entire career. And so that was like a personal level of interest that I had in seeing this. And we don't focus on entertainment in this way. And so I love that we were able to show the stories that are often untold through the lens of those people, and not kind of deferring to the majority population to try and speak on behalf of a community that typically doesn't have their voice. So I loved all of it.
You're making my work hard again, emotional and excited as well. But Aiden, because I'm curious about your takeaway. What is your biggest lesson?
Oh, to say one lesson is too difficult. So I'll just give you like, it's kind of a broad set of
you
things.
are also allowed to share a few.
But like number one with this program was that we started out with this question. And it was incredibly difficult to do this in some ways, because we had to invent a process and invent ways of working. And we had to bring in partners that we necessarily hadn't worked with before, and then 10 directors we hadn't worked with before, and see what happens. So there was a huge like risk in that. And what was incredible about this program was that everybody who we brought in, no matter who the partner was, were so taken by the question and by what we were trying to do, that even though things got really difficult at times, we were all really late, or I mean, Constance Domenica got COVID during this, but everybody pulled together to pull it over the line.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened, the magic for me is it showed up in two ways. One was, we didn't know what was going to happen. What was created was almost like a family atmosphere, where every partner came in and became part of the family. And then the 11 directors became part of the family. And that feeling state, I feel, continues to exist. And so that was incredible. That may not have happened. That's sort of that organic sort of family environment. You know, you can't fake that. That just happens authentically. And that's thanks to everybody who put their heart and soul into the project. And then, you know, unfortunately, I couldn't travel to Tribeca. I was sat in Dublin watching on social all of the pictures being shared, everybody coming together, meeting for the first time as a group. And that was just incredible. Like, talk about goosebumps. I was like sitting there scrolling, hitting refresh, liking things, retweeting, you know, just because it was just this amazing moment in time where the hard work, the blood, the sweat, the tears came to fruition, and each of the directors were able to stand up on a stage at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York as the city began to reemerge from the COVID crisis and introduce their opus to the world. And that was just absolutely incredible. And then in terms of opportunity, hey, we were giving opportunity to 10 short films, 11 directors, and they hired over 600 cast and crew, and majority from the BIPOC community. So the butterfly of effect of giving opportunity to talented people continues to just grow and grow and grow. And that was another incredible lesson. But mostly it was like, okay, sometimes when you're doing it scared, as Stacey Peters says, and you're doing it scared and it feels right, then the hard work, okay, it's still hard and it's still full of effort, but it makes a difference and it's meaningful, and that's how it just keeps you going.
I see you all making a bold and brave idea to make this happen, and realizing that you're not only changing the life of one person, you're changing the life of a bigger community. And I hope that the people who take the time to watch Rising Voices and also the individual videos attached to that, you can learn a lot. I mean, I learned a lot from those videos, but also the fact that you are activating supplier inclusion, that's, to me, is warming my heart beyond, beyond infinity and all. But what does the power of story and storytelling mean to you? And connected to diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. I'll talk to Aiden. Yeah, sorry.
No.
I'll just answer.
Like, I kind of came into filmmaking because stories make me feel less alone. And I think that with these kinds of storytellings, we're hitting the loneliness of others who haven't, been reflected on cinema before. And so, because like storytelling is a mirror in society in whatever that you presented, whether it's magical realism, whether it's fantasy, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, it is a mirror of our humanity and our society. And for so long, these stories have been, kind of going back to what I was saying, is like these stories have been told through a single lens, a very one-sided lens, a lens that has, kind of dehumanized a lot of people. And so the way that I see the power of storytelling in this program and in the way that all the partners are gearing towards is to pare that down.
Yeah.
And so that's for me, like what, going to the goosebumps.
And for you?
For me, I mean, the power of storytelling is freedom. I think the ability to just be and say and express who you are, who you, how you see the world, is one of the freest, I think, opportunities we have in our lives as individuals. And I mean, we've always seek to, as I think we just seek as human beings to leave something behind, to leave testament of like what we did or who we were, what, you visit a museum and it's there, And so in so many ways, part of, I think, what makes us unique is our ability to leave an account, leave a story behind, and share it. But at the same time, it's, who controls the narrative really controls the world. And for so long, I mean, Hollywood has a giant responsibility because it's such a giant microphone and amplifier of all the people in the world, and how we are depicted in those stories becomes how other people in the world, as these movies export, see us. And then it's very hard to go back in time and say, no, we got it wrong. And I find this moment in time so particular because I think we've maybe come together now as a community of people and are ready to say, okay, we really need to redefine the story of humanity and allow people to tell tell it how it is for each individual, so we can have an actual collective.
Also, you're creating a new door for people to walk through, a door that most of the time was closed, or if it was open, then only one person can walk through that door and be highlighted. And the fact that so many different stories, I'm excited for this generation. I'm excited for the next generation, because growing up, I did not see that many representation in the Netherlands, but also on television, it was otherwise you were a TV host, or you were a music artist or a hip hop artist. And the fact that you are sharing so many different stories where I feel connected. We all can be connected in that way. So thank you. And I'm curious about Misty. How, what did it mean for you to see this story, but also to think about the power of this story and how it connects to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
So I think storytelling is really powerful, and I think it actually shows the human side of people. Like, as humans, we are very complex. And, when we introduced ourselves, we're like, my name is this, and this is what I do. And we are so much more than what we do. But that's typically how people form their opinions about us. And so I think when you start to tell stories, you start to create this area of vulnerability, and people can see like how you ended up in the seat that you're in, why that's important to you. And I started the storytelling journey with Aiden back in February. It's like my first time telling the story. And at that time, I probably wasn't as like cheerful and as animated, because I was like, I'm still kind of scared, because when you open yourself up, it's some exposure. And so you invite people to ask you more questions. But I think because Constanza and Domenica's point, like, we have a responsibility as humans, right? Like, we all have something that we can be giving back. And so I think storytelling enables that to happen. And when I think about it and the importance of diversity, inclusion, and belonging, that is how we actually create this culture of inclusion where people feel like they belong. And that's how we create safe spaces. That's how people learn and grow. And I think that's how we can actually remove barriers, right, to access, when we actually take the time to understand what's behind the smile, what is beneath, outside of the resume. And I think those connections are formed, and they're genuine connections. And I think when you tell your story more and you build that relationship, you also are giving people permission to actually make some mistakes, because they know that you are really kind of in this entire fight together to create a better place and create more opportunities for everyone. So I think storytelling is like one of the most powerful tools that I'm still getting comfortable actually kind of using myself, and also encouraging the business, particularly our leaders and people who are in positions of power, so that the folks that look up to them can see the human side of them as well.
Thank you. And bringing it back to you, Aiden, because storytelling is your jam, right? So when you combine that with diversity, equity, and inclusion, what is the takeaway that you want to share with the other people that can learn from that?
Well, the number one takeaway is to recognize that the brain is not an information processor, it's a story processor. We spend our lives telling ourselves stories about ourselves that may or may not be true, and we make up stories for everyone else that we meet. And we're only able to interpret the world through the stories that we know, and the stories that we've seen, and the stories we've been told. And so if the brain is wired for story, and that's how we interpret our own culture, our own values, and how we judge others for their cultures and their values, well, it's incumbent on us to expose ourselves to as many stories as possible. And I think, what's interesting about storytelling, and Misty was hitting upon it there, is that true storytelling is about vulnerability and like breaking us down to those essential human truths, which actually combine us and get rid of the dichotomy of us versus them. The more stories, the more you realize that, there's a multitude of moments in a day where you could be an us or a them. And I think that's what great storytelling does. It realizes that the world is interpreted through this thing called storytelling, which how we can't possibly come to the world with a rational mind, judging everything logically and rationally. It just doesn't exist. And so if we're aware of our own story, the story that we use to get ourselves out of the bed and do the things that we do, and we're also sensitive to the stories we're creating on others' behalf, and then take the time to read stories, expose ourselves to stories, and get to the core of what it is to be on this planet at a tough time, and be vulnerable into the feeling state that creates, I think then we can have a better shared understanding of each other, which will help us in this quest to be more open and tolerant and empathetic towards the difficulties it is to be human. So that's what I think. I think story is foundational in our experience of the world.
To me, it feels like I'm sitting in church, in the diversity, equity, and inclusion church, and I'm sitting there in the back listening to all the amazing things, and I have to wheel myself in, not to say hallelujah. So that's why I sometimes bring on the awesome card to give you just the props for sharing that. But a lot has been said, and a lot has been done, and a lot of commitments have been shared. I do have to share a little bit context regarding performative diversity, equity, inclusion, where let's say that it's lip service, where people are not acting upon what they are committed to do. And the real diversity, equity, and inclusion, just like this ensemble of rising voices, where an idea started with, let's give the BIPOC community an opportunity, 10 people. And then those 10 people hire in total 600 people. And then those 600 people share the love, where they spread the love, and this message will be amplified. What is your take on, the performative actions and the real actions when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion? I'll start with Constanza and Domenica.
We see this a lot in people who are like, I'm a feminist, or I'm pro this, and we are on set a lot of times. We go in action and making decisions that go truly against that. And so I think that you have to realize that while there might be a lot of Instagram posts, a lot of companies saying that they are with the BIPOC community and Black Lives Matter and all of these social and cultural things that we're living through, when action comes into play, their character really shows. And so we're interested in weeding those people out and being like, I see you, okay, and creating a world with the real people. For us, like Rishi and Lena have been the real deal in every step of the way. Indeed, has been the real deal in all the steps of the way. Ventureland, everybody that came together for this initiative had the right intention, but it's not to just have the right intention. You have to act upon your intention. And it's sometimes hard and it's sometimes difficult, but I think that we need to be okay with discomfort, to really just, you have to break and be in an uncomfortable space to create a real, but I do think that there's a lot of work to be done in terms, because the real versus the performative is kind of like in our, at least in our experience and our perspective, in many ways we see this a lot, and it's disheartening. Because
here so much change is happening in Hollywood and so much this and so much that, but then you go, okay, well, how many actually like Latinx shows did studios buy this year and put out, and under what lens? And you hear the words of like, oh well, it's not authentic enough, and you're like, but I wrote it, like it's my story, so I don't know how much more authentic it could get,
Yeah.
So it's balancing that out. It's obviously we're in a moment of like growth and change, I hope. At least that's what I dream about and think is happening. But it's, it's being able to look inside yourself and go, am I performing or am I, being real?
Yeah.
And it takes each one of us, it's because that communication ends up hitting like, a larger culture in either a company or a group of people or a family or all of that. And so it's important to really check yourselves that we also are in a moment of like policing. We can't police everybody. We are policed by everybody. And like kind of that's not ideal. I personally am very turned off by that, but I think we have to be our own police in a way.
Yeah.
For what we're doing,
True.
what we're doing wrong, and where we could change and where we could grow and admit, I fell short there and I could do better, and that's okay.
But companies
True.
are still performing.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
the reality. Hollywood is still performing. That's
It's unfortunate that that is the reality, but with the movie that you, or the film that you created, you're showing a different narrative with indeed speaking up for you, being a true ally. And I see definitely indeed being an ally and also being an example, a role model. And I want to hear more about that from Misty's side.
So this is a question that I love to answer because I think it really helps people recognize the role that they are playing. So performative and performances to me are just that. They're for entertainment purposes only. And it's like being a cheerleader. And actually are not helping to advance the narrative and change the narrative and support in a meaningful way. So allyship is a verb. That means you have to be doing something. And, you don't get to choose what you get to do. Like you have to talk to the people who are impacted and have them inform how you're going to show up. And so even though I lead diversity, inclusion, and belonging, my lived experience is as a Black woman. So I need to check in with my Latinx community. I'm an auntie, not a mother. So I can't speak for someone who is a parent 24/7. So I have to learn in order to be effective. And this work, people tell me like, wow, you have a big job. And it scares me, but I recognize it. But when you're doing this work right, it is hard because it's not just about creating a fund and giving money to an issue. It's about going below and addressing the systemic barriers that have been in place historically, that if we don't address these funds, once they run out, we're just going to revert back to where we were. Once the statement has been made and people have forgotten, we go back to where we started. And so that's the difference. And so it's doing the hard work and recognizing that it's not going to happen overnight. I think there's some pledging happening in the retail space. So I love seeing more, people of color with their products in the storefronts and occupying certain percentages of shelves. Like that's systemic. That's something that can be sustained over a period of time. And so what I would say to people who always say, I'm so passionate, I care deeply, follow that up with, what can I be doing to actually change your experience as a person whose voice is always suppressed? So don't just tell me you care. Okay, great. Do something and let me help inform what action that is you're going to take.
And I'm going to add a little bit something to that. Find your accountability partner, because you're not going to say, I'm going to do that, and then nobody hears that, nobody can hold you accountable. So have that conversation with somebody who you care, somebody that you might just has met from another underrepresented group, for instance, and do your best for that person. We are not asking you to, bungee jump out of your comfort zone and embrace everyone at all time. Take one little step. A small step forward is a huge step, a huge impact for somebody else. So, Aiden, when you look at rising voices, because now you have set the bar high, you've all set the bar high, how are you going to keep these types of initiatives active within Indeed?
Well, we'll watch this space for some, in the coming weeks, we'll have some exciting Rising Voices news, but
Ooh.
well, I can't give anything away. But I think that the only way I can answer that question is that we need to, and it's also just repeating what Misty said, is that we have to be humble enough in our storytelling to not know and to go and find out, and ask the communities themselves that we want to impact what is vital, what is important, what is the story that isn't there, what is the narrative that exists that we have to change. And that's the starting point. So, you know, real storytelling is not knowing the answer and going and asking and finding out and being brave enough to carry that through. Also changing how things are done, doing new processes, like bringing new ideas to the world is hard and it takes work. It's easier just to do the traditional thing, bring in the traditional agency, bring in the traditional director, the person with the resume, trying to find new talent, breaking down barriers. Those things are hard. And I think that you just have to have the courage. So it's like listening and courage. And then, you know, in my personal life, I sit here as like an Irish white cis male, but it's incumbent upon me to hold my peers and the people in my circles accountable for what they say and what they do and how they show up. And, you know, I take that really seriously. And so, you know, really the three ways there, which is like listen intently and provide a platform for communities to tell their own stories, to do it the hard way, because that's where real change happens. And three, in your personal life, hold yourself and others accountable for the views and the stories we tell each other.
I love that you are connecting the personal and the professional accountability. And I hope that the people that are watching are taking notes, because this is my personal favorite as well. And to the ladies from the 271 films, Constance and Domenica, can you share something about this initiative that Indeed founded or Indeed provided, and how has it made a difference for you, but also how has it impacted other financiers, other funds when it comes to filmmaking?
I mean, the impact that it has had is huge. I think Aidan mentioned it in terms of like the amount of opportunities that were created. I think that, you know, some people are like, oh, do you really need $100,000 to make a film, a short film? The answer is yes. Like, I think that what this money allowed is for, it's not the same thing to make a $5,000 film with your friends and you're borrowing things and you're pulling teeth, and instead of being able to create and just go in and be a creative, you're spending majority of your time and energy looking for the way to make it. So here we have a very reasonable, generous amount of money to be able to give the filmmakers the tools and the experience to have the real filmmaking experience. So you have a full crew, you have access to the top color houses, sound houses, equipment houses, top creators, special effects companies. And so all of a sudden you're not playing and not playing, you're not struggling that struggle is sort of gone and it's alleviated. And when that happens, you're able to create. And I think that you know, it's not a miracle that we have 10 great films. You know, it comes with the resources and the ability and the focus and the time spent wisely into creating something. And again,
filmmakers were paid for, you know, there was a fund also,
which it should be, right?
Because
that's the other thing.
And they didn't have to be worried about, you know, the rent for that month or the next. So that,
these are real things
in
that
so many
happen.
ways, yeah, you can't be so creative and you can't give it your all when you're burdened by a lot of things and you're almost like going in debt to make a film. And like, so this just, you know, it also provided the tools that Hollywood uses to make the movies that we go to the movies to see.
Yeah,
just elevates the work and the narrative at the end of the day, because it's how you see it projected on screen that like makes a difference. And I mean, I think just the filmmakers have had a chance to like, you suddenly have a film that you can go out and like sell your work with. You suddenly have the tool to go out there and say, I'm a director and here's my work, and it's like this. And that changes everything. It changes how you see yourself, how you confidently walk into a room, how you're perceived. And we sit in meetings with friends that are like in studios, and everybody knows about the Rising Voices
They all know the
program.
filmmakers.
They've heard about it. They've watched the films. They've watched the films, and it's made an impact in our industry. Like, I think we're looking at Rising Voices and going, like,
who are these filmmakers? I want to.
Exactly. It's also a good way for Indeed to showcase that they support diversity, equity, and inclusion. But coming back, because what you shared reminded me of the challenge that I want to put out for the Indeed people, Aiden and Misty. Since you have done Rising and Voices for this year, I am excited for the upcoming years, right? Can you share something about that? Will this team remain here?
Really putting me on the spot here. Look, I think that in the coming weeks there's going to be some really exciting news around Rising Voices. It's something I'm really proud of, and certainly we watch this space for some exciting Rising Voices news, and maybe some new things that people don't expect coming down the track as well.
Okay, so for the people that aren't residing in the US, where can they check everything? Can they look it up on the Rising Voices page, or?
Yeah, both on indeed.com/Rising Voices, the update there, and also on Hillmangrad's website, the Hillmangrad/Rising Voices. Search that, it'll be there as well. But I do want to say, what's interesting about what Constance and Domi were talking about is that when we started out thinking how we're going to structure this program, we did think more filmmakers, less budget. But in that humility of not knowing how to do this properly and do it well, Lena came back very strongly, and Rishi saying, look, real opportunity comes not just from a bit of money, but like a proper budget that you would do to an established person. And so we took that on board and changed. Again, it wasn't easy to change. We had to change a lot of things in our planning. But if we're really listening and we're really authentic and we want to be credible, we have to make those changes. And we're glad we did. But it goes back to that, like, okay, well, if we're going to trust the partners, we got to trust what they say and get out of the way in some respects. And that's hard for brands to do, get out of the way.
It's hard for leaders to do that as well. So I'm bringing in Misty. What do you have to add on
to the question about what's next and what Aiden said? So I'm going to spin that a bit and just talk about what's next in terms of how we continue to drive like culture change with this initiative. And I think for me, it actually serves as a use case that we can point to. So one of our values is putting the job seeker first. And so with this project, when we focus on underrepresented communities and when we see how it had the butterfly effect and created additional opportunity, this is a story that we can tell internally. So as we design products, we can actually bring awareness to communities that have been underserved globally for an extended period of time. The other way that it continues to help us shape culture and influence in our space is whenever we do something, it's not just for the benefit of Indeed. We also think about the job seeker and the clients that we can actually influence as well to encourage them to do the same. So this will have residual effects for years to come, in addition to some of the things that we can expect down the pipeline that are more specific to the programmatic lens of this initiative. But we don't ever do anything in a silo, right? Like, we are here to help people get jobs, and we like to say help all people get jobs. And so while we are the spearhead of this initiative, we anticipate, probably providing guidance to people who are like, okay, I want to do something similar, where to start, or it might be in a different lane, where to start. So I think we're taking up space rightfully and being like the influencer. Indeed is usually first to market in a lot of powerful ways in terms of culture, inclusion, belonging. And we're stepping out a bit more boldly, so you hear more about us and the influence that we have. So that's
I
how this
definitely hear you. And also realizing that I read a recent study that you all did about happiness at work, where a lot of the elements are connected to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So for those people who need to know more, follow the footstep of Indeed, see what they are doing, read the article, see what they are doing, because adding the happiness index on the jobs, people are going to share how happy those jobs or working at that company will make them. And that's a valuable asset. That's a valuable asset. Going to the ladies, Constance and Domenica, which rising voices spoke to you the most? And you can only share one each.
That's not a fair
Sorry.
I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, like I think I would never be able to answer that question because we were personally and creatively, intimately connected to the filmmakers and their stories that they were part of us. So each one represents a giant. Each one is our favorite. It's so hard to say.
That's a fair question. That's a fair answer to a tough question. So yeah, thank you.
It's not like I'm embarrassed to tell you which one. I really would not know which one.
Yeah. Thank you. And going back to the final question for Misty and Aiden, and I'll ping back to Misty. How do you measure success in moving the needle on diversity, equity, and inclusion?
So I get this question a lot. And I think because the work is still very, very nascent, we're still determining all of the ways we measure success. So currently, from a quantitative standpoint, we can measure success by the number of applicants, or how diverse our candidate pools are during the applicant phase, how that translates into the offers that we actually extend, and at what levels we're bringing in representation into our companies. Obviously, we have a tech industry benchmark where we can look at, the rate of attrition relative to, the industry at our company, and then break that down by different demographics. And then we can also look at promotional rates, because that will tell us where we are investing our time, who we are spending, time with coaching. And then it also gives some insight into some of these microcultures that kind of come into play at work, whether we are in person or virtually, like we have been for the past almost 2 years. A couple of other measurements that have both like quant and qualitative components will be our engagement surveys and pulse surveys. And just understanding the sentiment of our organization is really important. And then, I think there's a lot that is not said that we need to pick up on as like people experts, whether it's the DIMB team, our human resource business partners as well. What are people not saying? What is the body language communicating that is not coming out vocally, right? So people will state things are super important to them, like, absolutely, I need to be paid well, but that's like foundational. But I really want to be energized. And so in the same way we look at, from the happiness report and that hierarchy of needs in business, those are some of the other measurements that we can incorporate as we try to figure out how do we continue to advance. So it's about increasing the representation, but it's really understanding that sentiment and sense of belonging, and continuing to evolve the measurement as we continue to learn more about this space.
So many takeaways, and unfortunately, we are almost at the end. So I want to challenge everybody to share a max of 2 takeaways. Keep it short and snappy. 2 takeaways of what people need to take away out of this conversation. And I'll start with you, Misty.
Wow, you want to come back to me first. So we talked about the power of storytelling. So I would encourage people to really lean into the power of storytelling. And then I would say listen to women. I think our voices are largely ignored still, especially in certain areas. And listen to the BIPOC community. We have a lot of value to add. We see it misrepresented a lot. So just come to us. We're the experts in our experiences, so listen to us.
Thank you. And Constanza and Domenica?
Takeaway. I think for any filmmakers that are watching, I would just say, don't give up. Like, just work hard, write your stories, figure out ways. If there's another opportunity, there's many programs that you can submit to. Get your work out there, and be authentic, be yourself. Don't because authenticity rises to the top, and it's been rising. And I think that trying to create something that to please a market or to please an audience, or thinking in ways of what's gonna sell, is not the way to go. Is what's gonna sell is your soul and your heart and your truth. So that would be something.
I love that.
Yeah, and I think to other people looking to create, diversity, inclusion, and all of those words and equity into their workspace, there's a quote by Martin Luther King that I read recently that really feels appropriate for today, and it's almost always the creative, dedicated minority has made the world better. So in minorities, believe in people whose stories you have not heard, because they will change the world.
Thank you. I'm handing the mic over to Aiden.
Yeah, two things I would say is, one is that the reality that you perceive, you have to acknowledge that is just a story that has been created over time through experience and through the information that you have exposed yourself to. And so if you start realizing that your reality is just a story, then your job is to expose yourself to as many other stories as possible. And that's, from unusual sources, different sources, challenging sources, scary sources, but exposing yourself to as many stories as possible, because it is then that you can change your view of the world. And there's far more that unites us as these crazy species running around this one little planet we have to say divides us. And I think, it is through that exposure that you realize that there isn't this us and them thing is just a total fallacy. There's only an us. Once we crack that, we'll be in a better place.
Thank you. I want to thank all my amazing, inspiring panel members, because today I was sitting in church and I really had that amen feeling. And also know that for the people that are watching, you can watch the replay. The replay link will be sent afterwards. Thank you all for sitting in. Thank you all for watching this amazing episode, and know that you please take your notes, because they dropped a lot of the golden nuggets. So thank you, and until next time.